Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the work being done by the Department of Defense regarding the threat of climate change and to reinforce congressional intent on this important issue. Now, last year's National Defense Authorization Act expressed the sense of Congress that climate change is a direct threat to national security. We've studied a number of readiness factors when it comes to our armed forces, but for too long we've not given this major multifaceted threat the attention that it deserves. Current and former military leaders and members of the intelligence community agree that climate change poses a security challenge that has the potential to affect our tactical and strategic readiness. Secretary Mattis was correct when he stated, and I quote, "The effects of a changing climate, such as increased maritime access to the Arctic, rising sea levels, desertification, among others, will impact our security situation," end quote. Now, naval bases such as Norfolk or Key West are already at risk for flooding. And in fact, Norfolk frequently deals with nuisance flooding. And that risk will only increase as storm surges increase in magnitude and tides continue to rise. Inland bases will experience other weather volatility, such as extreme heat and wildfires, all of which can impact their ability to train and ultimately impact readiness. The displays of dominance in the Arctic will grow, where new sea lanes will connect continents more directly than ever before. The changing global climate, Mr. Speaker, will also lead to greater instability in the form of economic migration, increased competition over resources, and possibly more failed states, which we know to be breeding grounds for extremism and terrorism. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that a changing climate will alter our joint battle space. So when the U.S. Congress instructs the Department of Defense to take these threats seriously and evaluate the risk posed to our national security by climate change, we mean exactly that. Our intent is clear, and there can be no room for misinterpretation. Last week, the Washington Post reported that during revision of the Department's January 2018 Screening Level Vulnerability Assessment Survey report, defense officials omitted information pertinent to how our military installations report their vulnerability to sea level rise, how climate change is affecting the operating environment in the Arctic, and the potential risks to the Department's ability to conduct training and testing activities that have important impacts on our readiness. Well, while I appreciate the need to update reports when it is appropriate and necessary, it is unacceptable to attempt to bend congressional intent for political convenience. The Department of Defense must answer tough questions as to what motivated these changes, if not a skewed political narrative. In fact, the issue of climate change and its impact on national security has become more bipartisan over the last several years. Now, in fact, last year, the National Defense Authorization Act, in that act, Congress instructed each service within the Department of Defense to assess the top 10 military installations likely to be affected by climate change over the next 20 years. We also instruct combatant commanders to incorporate the effects of a changing climate into their strategic battle plans. Now, 46 Republicans joined with Democrats to support this language on the floor of the House. Now, I expect that when this report is delivered to Congress later this year, it will make candid assessments in line with the clear language that we supported in that floor vote and that was signed into law by the President. Now, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that the Department remains resilient and is prepared to address the effects of climate change on threat assessments, resources, and readiness, as well as to conduct operations both today and in the future. Congressional oversight plays an undeniable role in that process. Now, Mr. Speaker, the dangers of climate change on our national defense are real, and we support the researchers on the front lines of these critical threat assessments. Together, we can continue to craft a sane and sober strategy to defend the United States from a variety of threats, including climate change. That is the expressed intent of Congress for the upcoming climate report and is a necessity as we prepare for our nation's future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back